Welcome to the workshop. Today we're going to start a project that's been on my list to do for a long time. I've had this car for about, I'm guessing 5 years now. I've yet to do it, but anyway, today we're going to start the project of actually getting the E31 converted over to a manual transmission. Let's get started. Before we get started, I want to talk a little bit about why I'm doing this project. The main reason I'm doing this is because BMW never shipped 840s, which is the V8 version, E31s with manual transmissions here to the US. We only got automatics in the V8 version, so I really just wanted to recreate that essentially, something that they made in Europe or Japan or somewhere else around the world. Yes, I could have started with the V12 and 850 with a manual transmission in it already, but what's the fun in that? And also, I really didn't think it was worth all the extra complexity that a V12 brings. You know, they're a little heavier, you know, essentially 50% more parts for not that much additional horsepower. I think these V8s started out at 282 horsepower when they came out, and the V12s are 296. So 14 additional horsepower really didn't sound like much to me, at least not worth it. And I'm not looking to take this to the track. It's really just going to be a daily driver. So I really wanted to stick with the V8 over the V12. And also because the 850 CSIs, which is the top of the line version, those have gotten really expensive recently. The last 5 that have sold on bringatrailer.com, at least at the time of this video, I think the average price has been like $165,000, which is quite expensive. So what I'm trying to recreate here is essentially a cheaper 850 CSI, you know, manual transmission that I wouldn't be afraid to drive. You know, the prices on the 850 CSIs, you know, I don't think I'd be comfortable driving it around town. So you can still pick these up for relatively cheap, and if you want to create a manual version of it, that's what I'm going to try to do here. So that's why I'm doing this. Let's talk about this specific car. This is a 1997 840ci. It's got the 4.4 liter M62 engine. I chose this color combo, which is essentially silver on gray, mainly because it's not black. I think 42% of all E31s that came here in the US were black. And I'm also in Texas. It gets very hot here. Just black cars just are way too hot for me. So I tend to go with the lighter, whiter, silver, you know, lighter cars like that. So that's why I chose this color in this spec this year. It's the last year that they had here, that they came here in the US. It's got the V8 I wanted, and it's in great shape. So that's why I'm starting with this platform. But with that, before we do any work, let's take it to the dyno and see how much horsepower it's putting to the ground. I'm down to Speedtech Performance here in Fort Worth. Gonna get the 840 dyno tested for a baseline. We'll see how it does. So I'm standing here about to get pictures of the dyno, and he said I can't stand on the side because of this hole right there. Broken drive shaft, flung out of the car on the dyno, hit the wall up there. So don't stand on the side of a dyno that's getting fixed. Here we go. I'm guessing 210, 220 to the wheels, given the automatic transmission and completely stock. My dyno runner is guessing 176. He's not even guessing I'll hit 200 horsepower, so we'll see. There goes. All right, here we go, last run. The second run was 252 to the wheels, which is really high for something that's rated at 282. Completely stock. Last run, 251, 283, so about the same. Completely stock engine, that's pretty good. All right, well, underneath the car, as you can see, the exhaust has been taken off. It's not too difficult, it's just rather heavy. I took it out as all one piece. Obviously, there's 2 hangers per side per muffler. There's a silencer that sits here. The catalytic converters go here. It's really just 2 bolts per collector, if you will. Undo the two front and rear O2 sensors, and it just really all comes down as one unit. Nothing too difficult. Luckily, this is a Southern car, so there's no rust issues. But I wanted to show you access to the drive shaft as well as the rear cross member for the training support. Everything's fairly easy to get to, so there's no surprises yet. So I'll show you the front side. All right, here's the front side. A little access to certain things. I went ahead and removed the shift cable. It's just a little lever right there. The next steps is actually going to be draining the transmission, removing the transmission cooler lines, which there's two, looks like 22 mil bolts on the side. Just undo these, and actually you'll pull this out. And actually there's a connector up front and the bottom of the radiator we'll have to remove. So all these pipes come out for the cooler. So we'll do that next, drain that, and then next steps in the process, we'll start looking to remove these bolts. It looks like I'll probably have to drop the sway bar down a little bit to get some more access to allow this to drop. And then it looks like the O2 lines, O2 sensor cables are on top, so we'll probably have to remove those after those drop down a little bit. But it looks pretty clean, easy access so far. We'll see how it goes. Alright, well, as you can see, I removed the sway bar, got that removed. I removed the transmission cooler lines. I think I said this was a 22 mil on this side. I think it's actually a 24 mil. There's a 17 millimeter on the other side. Remove those two. Get the sides of the cooler lines out. There's a couple brackets throughout here that you can undo it to remove the cooler line tubing supports. Also the front on the radiator, remove that bolt as well. There's a bracket on the back of the, like on the side of the block, that holds the two cooler lines together and kind of to the block. Just fit a 10 millimeter open end wrench up in there and get that removed to remove the cooler lines. They do slide out pretty easily from the front. I tried from removing them to the rear, but it didn't really work, so I recommend going through the front. So those are done. The next steps in the process is to remove the bolts for the torque converter. There's an access hole in the rear here, which is an access hole. I removed this little rubber grommet there, as well as there's a front side grommet on the front where you can get to the torque converter bolts. Just remove those, and then I'll move you guys over here to see how to get to the actual torque converter bolts. Okay, we're at the front of the engine, looking from toward the back. You can see the back side of the torque converter bolt right there. It looks about to be a 17 or so. So I'm going to just get a wobbler and an extension in and go through here, and obviously undo that, and then rotate the crank right here as I need to and get all four bolts out. Okay, on to the next step. The torque converter bolts are out. I've also already removed the 12 bell housing bolts. They are in this order here. There's two up at the very top that are a little difficult to get to. The two opposite the starter, I guess left-hand drive side, actually have a bolt on the back side, so make sure you get a wrench back there to hold them steady while you get the bolts out. So that's them. The ones on the top, kind of difficult to get to, so obviously I've built some sort of contraption with the wobblers, extensions, 3/8 inch drive, half-inch drive as well, to make sure it can get torque. So you just kind of feed it up top like so, and hold it with your hand, kind of guide it on the head at the top of the bell housing. It's not too bad, but it takes a little finesse. So that's done. Drive shaft is out, flex coupler's out. Started to remove the wiring clips to make it a little easier as we drop it out. These clips just kind of hold all the O2 sensor wiring on, and the transmission controller stuff. There's a couple clips on the side as well. Two on the top of the bell housing, just kind of reach up and grab them, pull them off. But with that, I think we're ready to drop the transmission. I'll get the transmission jack, support it, and then start removing the rear transmission support. And then on to the next step. Okay, transmission jack is supporting the transmission. I'm going to just loosen up the rear transmission support, start lowering it. I'll probably have to remove this and pull this out to get these cables out, because these cables actually route around up until the engine bay, so I don't think I'll be able to lower it because it's gonna get stuck here, so we'll see how that works. I'm going to start lowering, see how we go. Transmission's free. Oh. Hope you're getting hung up on the headers a little bit. There we go. I can't get there yet. Alright, that's it. Transmission's out. Alright, there we go. Alright, now that the automatic transmission is out of the car, let's talk a little bit about the hardware that's going to be needed to complete the swap. Some of the stuff is very specific to E31, so we'll go through it. But the most obvious thing you're going to need is a transmission. This is a 420G transmission from a that was available in Europe on the 840ci that this car is. We did not get a manual transmission 840ci here in the US, so what I'm trying to do is duplicate what they got in Europe. And this is the transmission that was on the 840ci. This transmission was also available here in the US on a couple different cars like the E39 M5, the E90 M3, the 850ci E31 actually had this transmission as well. So if you're looking for this transmission, the easiest way to find it is from an E39 540i. We got the E39 540i here in the US with a manual transmission. It's the same transmission, actually it's the same engine as the E31 as well. So it bolts right up, pretty easy swap. When you find one of these, you're going to want to get a couple things off the donor car. One being the flywheel. The donor car I got off the transmission off of actually had a lightened UUC flywheel. It's aluminum. The pressure plate is all kind of hot spotted, so I got a friction surface for it, as well as the gall plate and mounting bolts. So I picked some of those up from UUC, and the clutch and pressure plate that are specific to this flywheel. So I've got all the kind of flywheel clutch pieces we'll need, and the pilot bearing and throwout bearing. Got those ready to go. So these are kind of shared with the E39 chassis. There are a couple things that are very specific to E31 that you won't be able to find anywhere else. One being the shift knob shift boot thing. It's all one unit. I don't know why they have one unit, but this was very specific to E31. They don't have these in the US. You have to go to Europe to find these. I got it off of eBay. Some guy in Latvia or Lithuania or something like that, but picked this up. It's not cheap. The other thing specific for the E31 is the shifter arm. So the shifter arm I got from the same guy. Actually, I got the shift boot, like I said, Lithuania, Latvia, something like that. But this is the E39 from the donor car shifter arm. It looks almost identical. Obviously, the tips are a little different, but the design, the offset, they're all the same, except the one for the E31 is a little bit closer to the transmission. So this is a little higher on the E39. I don't know if that'll make much of a difference. So if you're doing the swap and you want to try an E39 shifter arm, it should work. You'll probably need a different length selector rod. So this was the last piece that's very specific to the E31. They do not have these anywhere. I couldn't find them. eBay, scrap yards, anything like that. Which is not such a bad thing, because companies like Garagistic, Ireland Engineering. They actually have custom link shifter rods that you can order. So what I'm going to do is install the transmission, install the selector rod or selector joints, all that good stuff, put the shifter in, and then measure for the selector rod. And I'll just order a custom length one. So those three things are very specific to E31. You won't be able to find anywhere else. The other things that are kind of shared with other chassis, the shifter itself is actually from an E30. So it shares E30 and many other different models. So these are very cheap. I believe this is from a Z4 or Z3. It's a little bit shorter throw. So very standard shifter. The pedal box is from an E34 manual transmission. So this is the same part number as the E31 manual in Europe. So I picked one of these up off eBay, not too expensive. The other thing you want to pick up is a rear transmission support. This is also from an E34 manual. Now these you can find on eBay every once in a while. However, I found this on Pelican Parts for like 60 bucks clearance. I think it was the last one, but you'll need one of these for the rear of the transmission. Also shared with the E34. Now, while you're in there doing some of this stuff, you're going to want to change out some basic parts like the master clutch and the master and slave clutch. These are shared with other models, so they're not too expensive. Rear main seal, mine is leaking a little bit, so I got one of those. The crossover coolant pipe gasket, I've got one of those. Motor mounts, transmission mounts, some of the shifter bushings, got some replacement parts there. All standard stuff, nothing too extravagant as far as prices. The one custom thing you're going to have to make, because you're not going to be able to find the correct length of drive shaft, is you're going to take your automatic transmission drive shaft, which is shorter than what you need, and lengthen the front half by 88 millimeters, which is about 3.5 inches, which is what I've done here. I've taken my automatic drive shaft, had the front section lengthened by 3.5 inches, changed out the U-joint as well as the center support bearing, just as maintenance. But that are all the parts that you'll need to complete the swap. As I get in there, I might find some more, bits and pieces we might need, but I'll highlight those as I find them. But that should be it. With this, we're ready to start the installation. Let's get with it. Well, as you can see underneath the car, we've got the maintenance items all done. The rear main seal, the oil pan gasket, stuff like that is done. Also put the UUC light and flywheel on there as well as the pressure plate and clutch. We're ready to slap the transmission in and then go from there. So let's get this thing up and installed. Here we go. Okay, it's in there. I'll go around and put the additional bolts up top off camera, but there's that rear transmission support, works perfect, lines up good, clutch and gauge fine, so let's move on to the next step. If you're doing the swap, I do have a couple tips that might make it a little easier for you. First thing is to keep the transmission in gear. Like as you feed it into the clutch and pressure plate, keep the transmission in gear, and then we can spin the output shaft, which will spin the input shaft and hopefully make the teeth of the input shaft mesh with the clutch a little better. So keep it in gear, and as you feed in the transmission on the motor itself, just spin this. It might help a little bit. Also, another thing, keep your shifter arm actually installed prior to putting the transmission in here. You want to actually, because that clip that holds the shifter arm on there is very difficult to get to when the transmission is in the car. You want to put it on first, but make sure you actually remove your rear support bush. Let's see if I can get this. Yeah, right back here, the rear support bush. The bushing goes on the end of the rod here, and if it's already installed, you can't push it in. So take it out first, and then you'll just basically put this on here, and then snap it in later. So put this on first before you put the transmission in, make it a little easier. So with that, we'll go ahead and end the episode right here. It's a good stopping point. So this time we got the transmission out and the new one in. Next time we'll get to the hydraulics We'll get the shifter put in. There's a little bit of wiring as well, but with that, we're almost done. So, until next time.